Welcome everyone back to the Meme Ranch podcast. I'm your host Kaelan Deese, and today we have a really awesome guest with me. It's Mo Mahmood, and he is the founder of Mo Monuments, which is a very unique and interesting initiative that I just found fascinating and wanted to talk more about, considering we are within the 250th anniversary right now for America. And Mo Monuments has a very simple, but I think needed solution to one of the things that's really been plaguing our society for a long time, and that's a lack of form, a lack of bringing back people who helped create this country and make this the country that it is today, bringing back forms and monuments into our society. We've seen so many times over the last years, especially during the Biden era, where people were tearing down monuments and wrecking them on campuses, causing havoc and trying to destroy the legacy, I think, of this country. And what Mo is working on here is very interesting. And so, without further ado, Mo, what is your initiative, and why have you targeted 1,000 monuments as kind of your goal to create?
Yeah, sure. More Monuments is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. I've been working on this for, I want to say about 4 years now, a little bit over that. We started this 4 years ago with the goal of building massive statues, sculptures, monuments in America again, made in America for Americans. The first project we did was back in 2024. It was the Wellspring of Progress, which is now the largest monument in Austin, the greater Austin area. It's of Spindletop, which was the first oil geyser discovered in Texas back in 1901. Now we're working on the statue of George Washington. We got a 10-footer done in France, and we're shipping it from France to America right now. That'll be very exciting when it arrives. We're anticipating it'll be here on American soil in the June. So we're going to pick it up in the port of Houston, and we're going to, tour it around a little bit, take it to Austin after. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, tell me a little bit about that. Like, it's been constructed already, or it's just something that you're kind of get to tour the U.S. After it was created in France. What's the backstory behind it?
I'm not sure if you can see this. This is a 10-footer we got done, and it's complete. And we did this of our own accord. We started with like a small clay model before the clay model. We did like a small sketch. After the clay model, we did a slightly larger plaster model, and then we doubled it in size again, made it 10 feet tall. And we did this of our own accord because we believe America is worth celebrating, and the 250th is coming up. And we commissioned this. We worked with an artist who's an American in France. His name is Paul. Him and I have known each other for a couple of years now. We met through Twitter. He's a really talented artist. Him and I worked together side by side for a few months. But overall, he was the lead sculptor, the lead artist, and without him, like, man, it would have been really difficult to do this. He's really, really talented, so I'm really lucky to know him and to have worked with him.
And what is your idea about bringing something like this idea that you've created to events like CPAC? That's how I got to know you, through my friend Jeff, also known by the artist name Xvala, who I'm sure you saw at the event, was the golden MAGA hat. I mean, that to me is also like George Washington. Washington is a form. Trump's golden MAGA hat is a form. I think that this re-emergence of bringing forms back into the limelight is very interesting, just because I think that for the past decade or more, it feels like a lot of the artwork that's dominated the culture is a lot of things that we would maybe see described as like pop art. Sort of like a caricature of a IP that's owned by a corporation or something like that, where people have become collectors of these types of, maybe you would call them like a chip types of forms, or I wouldn't even really call them forms. I call them monstrosities, to be honest. I mean, to case in point, I mean, you have this Chinese corporation called Pop Mart that creates these sculptures, these statues that are like, pricing is like around like 2,000 all the way to 5,000, depending on like the size of these things, and they're just basically these plastic these I would say good quality, I guess, plastic. You also have like things like bears, like in the Miami arts world, like these little Lego like gummy bear type looking bears that a lot of people like hype beasts collect and stuff like that. I mean, all of it. I was telling Jeff last night, you could almost characterize it as something that you could throw in the trash had you not paid a large, penny for for some of these pop cultural a chip things that people think are gonna get, rise in value maybe at some point, but in reality they're just kind of these charms that people use to flaunt their wealth and things like that, and they're in many ways kind of soulless and devoid of soul. What
Mhm.
about bringing back monuments, is sort of, do you see it as sort of like trying to counteract that type of art being the thing that has dominated popular culture, for more than 10 years?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I think what's really important is having sort of work that's artistically interesting. Because that's what art is. It's not about like labels or titles or like, this is Art Deco or this is neoclassical. I feel like art is something that's beautiful, it's exciting, it's poetic, it makes you feel something. It's sort of interesting to look at. Um, and sort of part of the reason we're doing a lot of this stuff in America with Americans is if you go to these overseas places like China or Thailand, if you get bronze statues made in those places, you have to be there in person to monitor that sort of quality. Because Americans, I think, are really obsessed with like fine details, quality. And then, for example, if you go to China or something like this, if you get like a bronze made over there, you have to fuss around with the bronze a little bit. You have to like grind it down. You have to do welding. You have to do all sorts of like cleaning up the bronze afterwards. And you don't really see as much of a focus on quality. And on top of that, we also sell these miniature statues we make in America in Las Vegas. And the amount of care that goes into each of those, it's like crazy. Like we hand paint them ourselves. It's really something where even if there's like a small dent or something like that, we remake it again. And I don't think you can get that level of care if you outsource. And so that's something I want to see happen again is bringing manufacturing back, bringing artisanship back to America, and beautiful craftsmanship overall. And that's sort of what we're working on and focused on as well. Yeah.
So you have a pretty bold tagline on your website that you want to create 1,000 monuments for America, adding 1,000 new monuments to honor the stories, achievements, and milestones that have shaped our history and our future. It seems like one of these major monuments that you're going to be bringing is this George Washington uh, uh, one from France. I'm wondering if you kind of see that as one of your, like, is this number, 4 or 5, or is this like the first, like what's the tally looking like on your number of monuments that you're trying to bring in, or is it sort of like a larger like future set goal that you want to like make 1,000 monuments permanent installations in public parks or things like that?
Yeah, sure. I turned 25 recently. I expect to hopefully live to 100, fingers crossed. Well, we got one monument done, which was the Wellspring of Progress in Austin area. That's the largest in Austin. This monument, George Washington, is technically number three. Number two was sort of a large sculpture of a bicycle for a walkable community outside of Phoenix. We've got the material source for that. It's just a matter of the permit. As soon as the city of Tempe gives us the sort of thumbs up, we'll be ready for that. But the land is secured. We've got sort of the material lined up. It's just a matter of like welding it into place and pouring the concrete pad. For George Washington, this will be number three. And it has multiple phases. It's not just the singular 10 footer. The goal is to scale it up even larger using robotic forming method. And how that works is basically they take a sheet of metal and they press it on both sides with robots. And that way we're able to form it fully in America without having to go to another country because robots are way more cost effective. And that's sort of leaning into our strengths as Americans. We have technological superiority, even if we don't have the ability to craft things with our hands anymore. And so, yeah, there's a company we're working with in California. They've got a robotic forming method, and they can do 50-foot panels in 1 month and 500-foot panels in 3 months. And just purely for reference, the Statue of Liberty is 151 feet. So we can do a massive statue really easily in this country again, because exterior panels are the hardest part of statues.
What's the number one cause or the reason for why it seems like large statues have gone away, or that anytime that we do get new ones, they always seem to be abstract? If that's a good way to put it, like they don't always resemble direct human forms or things that are tangible. And oftentimes, whenever they get finally debuted, you see a lot of criticism, especially in certain cities from the right. I remember there was a very like one uh, monument that was recently, I think, debuted in the last couple of years. I believe it was. I hope I don't get this wrong, but I think it was in Chicago. It was like a Martin Luther King
Yep.
related.
That was
Uh,
Boston, I think. Yeah.
oh, it was Boston. Yeah, it was like arms that were kind of like twirling or kind of shifting around, kind of like, I don't know if I'm like doing like, but it's like it looks like a person giving themselves like a hug, but it's just the arms. And why do you think that type of monument might turn some people off? Like, I mean, not maybe it's not even about the subject that they're upset about, but it's just the way that it was executed.
Hmm. I mean, I think these sorts of answers are kind of over-determined. There's probably a lot of different answers. But you do hit on something kind of meaningful there. It's like, it seems like for the most part, statues have gotten smaller over time, but it wasn't always this way. And for a long time, it seemed like statues were as large as buildings. Like the Statue of Liberty was proportionate to the skyline of New York at the time. And now the buildings have reached 1,700 feet. Why don't we have a statue that's like 800 feet? The largest statue in the world now is like 697, something like this. Um, but America still only has the Statue of Liberty, which is about 151. So over time, buildings have gotten much larger. The largest building in the world is about 3,000 feet. But the statues have remained relatively stagnant or declined in size. And when it comes to actual figures or representations, you could argue it's like a cultural thing. We don't really celebrate individuals as much. We're kind of disconnected from history. It seems like Americans really don't celebrate history that much. Maybe you could say it's like sort of a political thing. If we represent a person, then they're going to be like, oh, why not this person?
Mm.
So it's more abstract. It's sort of like an artistic trend as well, I think. And then there's also like purely from a financial perspective, it's easier to do an abstract blob as opposed to a human because a human requires more skill, more labor. It's more time consuming. It's a lot of these other things that go into it, and I bet the financial aspect of this is way larger than we give it credit for. That seems to be the case for buildings, and it's probably the case for statues. But if you go to my website, for example, you can go to the ecosystem page of moremonuments.org, and I've got a list of every monument builder in America. I've been compiling this list for about 4 years now. And it's not just me. There's other people. There's like dozens of other people doing this. It's not just me anymore. It was just me, except maybe like 4 years ago it was me and like a few other guys, but now it's like actually growing exponentially. Yeah.
Yeah, so like kind of walk us through this, or as I kind of try to take the controls. Hopefully, I don't, you
Yeah.
know, let me see if I can full screen this to make it a little bit better. Yeah, so basically, each one of these blips on here is supposed to signal where monument builders are at. So bunk
I
or
would say
or
the tabs are the most useful thing. So if you go to the search bar at the top, you could type in "We belong together," and this is sort of an example of what you were saying. It's a bit more abstract. It's not a specific person, and you click the website.
and I
Um,
gotta open a new. Let me see. It's loading.
yeah, sure. This is a proposed project for Alcatraz Island in San Francisco. It's kind of
Oh
crazy.
wow.
333 feet tall. Um, and I mean, Alcatraz is, it's not much to look at right now, but it could be. Um, but then on the other hand, it's sort of like the opposite approach. If you look up like American Colossus Foundation, you can Google that if you want. It's a massive statue of Prometheus on Alcatraz Island.
Colossus Foundation. Probably spelled Colossus wrong.
Yeah.
Let's see this one. Oh wow.
Yep. So, I mean, it's growing exponentially every month now. It's not just a few people. It's not like a disparate movement. It's actually gaining a lot of traction.
This is very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, for example, I also know that there's a statue of Jesus Christ 300 feet tall that's going to be built in Utah. That's on the website. There was a statue of a Tamil war god that's going to be put in North Carolina. I don't want to butcher the name. I think it's Marugum. And that's going to be 350 feet tall, larger than the Statue of Liberty. So there's this way in which these things, especially over the past year, have started gaining a lot of traction. And that's like really interesting to me.
Oh wow, yeah, this is like would this be in yeah, it's right outside of Amarillo. The or is this where you're thinking the cross of our Lord Jesus, or is that something else? Oh,
So
that's just 1995.
if you look up, I think it's Christ our Lord. Um,
Christ. Cross of our Lord Jesus Christ? Or
um, I can double check. Are you using the search feature?
yes. Typing in Christ. But at any rate though, it's really it's really interesting that like these are all different places that you can kind of look and see the concept of like where the monument would be. It's like an idea. It gives people like a good representation of like this is how things could be. It's like the meme where like, such and such, like this is what society would look like if like such and such happened, or that template. Um and I'm curious, like, do you think that there is any like the art world is can be so judgmental and can be like so unforgiving. I'm curious if you've ever had any interactions with people talking about this, maybe people who are part of the art world as we sort of know it as. I would, for people looking for more definition behind that, I would just say like, rich white stuck up liberals who don't like anything that really commemorates American history, because maybe they it's lay bad kind of sort of thing. Like, do you ever like brush up against people who are maybe a little bit questioning like the initiative or anything like that?
Yeah, I think some people question ambition generally. They're like, why do you want to build it so big? You know,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people are doubting, and I mean, we use new technology for statues, so like that's kind of interesting. But the reason we're doing that is because it's been 140 years. You know, the Statue of Liberty was made in 1886. It's now 2026. Why don't
Mm-hmm.
we have large statues in this country? It's sort of a question that really drives me, and I'm trying my best to figure it out. And if we can validate this technology in the next year or so, I think that would be really interesting. And everything in the world is, I mean, it will really be impacted if we're able to build statues with robots. Like that will change how we completely build everything. I think it won't be just statues, because we already use the technology for like robots and automobiles and airplanes. Why can't we use it for buildings? Why can't we use it for statues or like
Mm-hmm.
large structures? And so I think a lot of people in the art world are really averse to like sort of ambition. But that's part of the reason I'm really interested in the technology industry, because I feel like sort of the SF tech crowd, sort of people on tech Twitter, despite their faults, they really do have a wide range of ambition, and they're really supportive. Engineers specifically are really, really supportive of really ambitious projects, and they want to try to figure it out with you. And so, I mean, I started my career in tech, and I've always kind of stuck with it, even though I'm technically not in tech anymore. It's
Mm-hmm.
really something where a lot of my patrons are tech people. It seems like those people really love statues and the idea of building massive stuff in America again. And I really appreciate that. Yeah.
What do you think that these types of large forms, like if they were more, if they were more abundant and more of a, like I think about in Asia, like with China, you have so many different temples that are in some cases sometimes hundreds of years old, in many cases are, and whenever it comes to these types of forms and like maybe sort of the deficit or the lack thereof in many parts of the country, what like do you have any sort of grander philosophy beyond behind this, that if these were existing today that they could actually have like an impact psychologically on people to want to be more ambitious themselves as individuals?
Yeah, I mean, I envision like an American Renaissance of sorts where people are optimistic again, building large structures and celebrating their history and being really optimistic about the future. I mean, that's been like a really driving force of like my project over like the past few years. Apart from that, I think there's sort of this fight that we're in right now. It's like I sort of call it the great forgetting. Like it seems like we're in the throes of like a great forgetting where we've completely disconnected from history. I was kind of taught a lot of the wrong things growing up, like about American history. I wish I learned more about our heroes, people that really meant a lot to our country. George Washington included. It seems like a lot of Americans today, if you ask them what happened 200 years ago or 100 years ago, they really can't like answer questions very well. They have a general sense of what happened, but they don't know any of their heroes or any of the major events that shaped the country or why the country is even great. And that's a real bummer because I feel like America is such a positive force for good, and that's something worth protecting. And we should be celebrating more often. I want better art in this country and better celebrations. We definitely need to get back to it. And I think the 250th is a really good opportunity for that.
Yeah, that seems to be one of Trump's own projects that he's been wanting to champion. And we were talking about before we went on about the National Endowment for the Arts and their grant program that they had for creating the Garden of National Garden of American Heroes was the full title for this project. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around about maybe what the implementation is going to look like. I guess it says on its website that the period of performance is going to last about 8 months. So I guess they're going to be temporary installations, but that's still quite a noble feat to sort of bring in, you know, almost like a way to create a pop up for all of the deficit of figures that might not even have statues made of them yet. It's like here's a little snapshot, America, of what we could have if we dedicated more places, parks, third spaces, whatever you want to call it, to representing these American heroes and these people. And I mean, is that really how maybe you see this project? Is it's sort of like we don't obviously they don't have the budget to just do what they want with creating 8 or 9 different huge sculptures, and obviously you have to find the places to put them, and this is a project that had to get done within the time span of Trump becoming president and America turning 250, which is only a year. um I'm I'm curious, like where does the significance arise with creating these types of miniature pop-up types of forms? Because the idea is, I think, you give people a taste of what it could be like, or what it would be like to have like a statuary garden, and maybe people desire it more once they kind of get a taste of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you saw examples of this at like the World's Fair, for example, which a friend of mine is bringing back. His name is Cam Weesey. He's running the World's Fair company to bring the World's Fair back to America. Because the last World's Fair in America was 1984. And so it's been like over 40 years since we had one of those. And you look at all the photos, and it's always these beautiful buildings, massive statues, great celebrations, people walking around really happy, kids being inspired. And I think a lot of people are like, why didn't we keep those things? Why didn't we, try to preserve the building or preserve the statue or something like that? I think almost every statue, if not every statue at the World's Fairs, was destroyed. They could have saved it. It was plaster for the most part. If you left it indoors, it would have been all right. If you left it outdoors, it wouldn't have been. So it could have been saved. And it seems like there's really not much of a focus on like preservation. I wish there was more of that. But overall, I think people see those things and they're like, that couldn't have been real. Like, there's a lot of conspiracy theories online, like, oh, this didn't actually happen. Those were permanent structures, not temporary or something like that. But no, it's really, really quite inspiring. And what I would also say is like in America, we have so many figures that don't have statues yet. For example, John Neely Bryan is the founder of Dallas, Texas, and he doesn't have a single statue of him. There's no statue of the founder of Dallas, Texas, and so we're being considered for a commission right now for John Neely Bryan because there is no statue that exists of him yet. And then there's all these other people that have statues, but the statues are like kind of modest. Sometimes it's like a bust, or sometimes it's like a relatively small figure. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think those things could be ennobling if viewed by the right person. But why don't we have a massive statue of Abraham Lincoln, for example? He's really saved our country. And then there's a lot of other people like, I think, Nikola Tesla, Benjamin Franklin. I want to see a 50-foot tall Benjamin Franklin in Philadelphia. I think that would be great.
Well, and not to trivialize it at all, but I think that in some ways we could borrow some of the ambition from countries even like Japan. Like I recall there was a giant mech kind of
Yep.
statue that they did, which obviously we are talking about doing things that are more true to life. But I mean, if you're talking about trying to mirror ambition, I mean, look at this thing. I want to pull up an image of it if I can. That's actually high res. If I can. Google will actually give me a physical break right now. But you know the Gundams that I'm talking about. Like they have a a dedication. I mean, it's almost like that makes sense for Japan. Here in America, it would just be kind of like weeaboo kawaii bullcrap. But to for them to do that just kind of proves that it's possible. The possibility is there. It's just the approach and actually seizing on it. It seems like no one's doing it. Why haven't we seen billionaires, like put money into this yet? I mean, have you considered reaching out to people like even Elon Musk about this idea?
Yeah, well, they are, but a lot of it's like kind of private. I know
Hmm.
a lot of foundations that have received donations for this sort of stuff. I think the most prominent of which is like sort of Jeff Bezos funded the Clock of Long Now, which is a 500-foot tall clock inside of a mountain that will tell time for 10,000 years. It's in West Texas. So that's probably the most noteworthy example of the past 20 years. I know Elon has funded some statues in private, and sometimes he posts about it on Twitter, but sometimes he doesn't. And recently, he's gotten into statues even more. I know he's like supporting statue projects online, and he also funded some murals of a recent tragedy that happened. That they're putting up murals everywhere of Irina. I don't know if you recall when that happened a few months back.
Right,
So
and
they put up murals
in
everywhere.
in Carolina, right on the light rail.
Yeah. And so
Hmm.
they put up murals all over the country, and I know Elon was part of that as well. So it seems like there is a resurgence of interest in the arts, especially around billionaires. But I do think there is sort of value in like getting everyday people involved, sort of mid-tier patrons, and then sort of large-scale sort of checks from like billionaires and sort of high net worths. So I think you've got to engage with everyone throughout the entire chain, right? Like it's not about how can we get one massive check, but how can we also get like thousands of like small checks? And so that's something we've been trying to figure out for probably a few months now is like, how do we get more and more people involved? And I think the Twitter page has been doing part of that. I think crowdfunding probably isn't all that it's cracked up to be, but there's a lot more interesting ways you could do it. And so that's something we're looking to release soon. Yeah.
So, what are people following like whenever people follow you, what kind of content can they expect to come and see? I'll put your name up here on the board in a second. But just kind of explain to me kind of the type of content that you're providing to people on your socials.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we post a lot of progress updates about like the 10-foot statue we made. I also sell these mini statues on my website, about 12 inches tall on a 4-inch pedestal. And those are quite good, I think. They're made in America in Las Vegas. And we hand paint them ourselves, a few coats of paint by hand. And we ship them anywhere in America. So if anyone's interested, that's it's pretty fun. And it seems like I think about this a lot. The Romans during the Roman Empire, they had at least two statues in their house, regardless of class. Like always, they had like two statues in their household. And you think about how many statues the average American household has. It's like negative. Like we don't even have any. So I think you should try to be a little bit like the Romans in some way because they were really good at this. They were really good at remembering their ancestors, and I mean, it really helped them as a civilization survive as long as they did because they understood their history. They had like mass of their ancestors in a cabinet in their house. So as soon as you enter your house, you see a bunch of faces of your old ancestors, and that reminds you that you got to live up to their legacy. And I think that's really important. And so I think we can take custom commissions of like anyone. And so that's something we're looking at right now is if you have any ideas of a statue you want to build, let's build it together. That'd be pretty fun. Yeah.
Hmm. How much has 3D printing changed over the last decade, and how is it going to revolutionize any of the progress that you're trying to make with this?
Well, I know wire EDM is kind of popular now. I think they sort of do metal 3D printing, and that could be good for basic forms, but again, you got to rough it out with your hands and grinders and stuff like this. I would say resin 3D printing is quite good now. Ideally, you have molds and you can pour resin into them. I don't know if PLA basic 3D printing is as useful. I mean, for the cost you're going to spend, you might as well do resin. It takes a
Hmm.
bit longer, but it's much higher quality in terms of statues you can produce. And it is something that's sort of really democratized at this point. Like, for example, in Austin, we have a makerspace that has like 6 printers, and hardly anyone ever uses them. And they'll
Hmm.
give you support on how to use them, and you can make anything you want. You just have to pay for filament or resin, whatever material you use. And those are like, not too bad. I think like 30, $40 sometimes. Yeah.
Okay. What is something that you think is happening right now within, because I mean Austin's a pretty artsy scene there in Texas. Like, is there any space there where you think that should get started with this kind of initiative that should start to, I mean, like Zilker Park, is it lacking any monuments?
Well, I'm more bullish on sort of new cities.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in 2024, my buddies started a new city called Prototown, and I was the first guy to move there in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've got about 30 people. And so I kind of like the idea of these new cities as opposed to old cities. Not saying old cities can't make beautiful art, and they probably should do it more. But it seems like these sorts of new cities, new communities, new towns, these are
Like,
sort of the
you're
best
talking
places.
about like unincorporated kind of towns, right? Or is
Yeah,
it?
unincorporated. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Some might call them startup cities.
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely recommend looking into this movement. It seems like a lot of them are happening around Austin and Texas. Like for example, there's an initiative in Valentine, Texas, and West Texas. There's Montenoso. There's Ostantinople. I promise that's a real thing.
That's awesome.
Ostantinople. And there's Prototown. I was the first guy to move there. They have 30 people now. I think next year they'll have 100. So it seems like these things are growing quite a lot, and it seems like Texas is probably the best place.
Wait, so Mo, are you in Prototown right now?
I'm not at the moment, but
Okay.
big fan, and I definitely
S-
visit sometimes. Yeah.
So you move there, but you visit, like, so you
Yep.
kind of like move there just like kind of briefly, but then.
We moved there to build the sculpture of Spindletop.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So
That's
that
so
was about 4 or 5 months then. Yeah.
that's so fascinating. Yeah, no, I think that there is a almost like a boom right now happening in unincorporated towns for a number of different types of things. I mean, but for business, but basically what you're saying is like there's another avenue here, and it's through basically having the free reign to build whatever you want without having to worry about like permits and things that might uh, you know inhibit your ability to create the size and the scale of structures that you want to actually create, right?
Yep. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this is part of the reason people go into the desert for Burning Man and they build the large statues because
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to ask anyone. And that's kind of a really nice thing. But what if you could take that same energy and do it somewhere where people could actually live and then eventually develop even more stuff
Mm-hmm.
and sort of engage with it on a daily basis where it's like permanent and you don't have to move it, you don't have to burn it down. You can keep it there permanently and it does leave a lasting economic impression and cultural impression in a really
Mm-hmm.
positive way. And so that's really interesting to me, the startup city movement. Yeah.
That's yeah, and Trump has had he I feel like the one time he was really kind of making me think really big. I mean, he often makes me think that big, especially right now with what we're doing with Iran. But like in terms of like future scale, it was whenever he was touting along the campaign trail the idea of freedom cities, which did at the time to me ring in the unincorporated kind of vein of things. And he was talking about the idea of like kind of doing your own sort of laissez-faire way of creating a city that is able to do things that you might describe or use the adjective of like future focused, because I think the idea is just having more freedom away from government, from bureaucracy that's going to tie you down. I think it's kind of like the idea that inspired the line in Saudi Arabia, the line city, which I'm sad that that's not going to happen. I mean, I wasn't the most optimistic about like logistically, you're just gonna have a city where you just like have a straight line that you go. But it was a cool idea, and I wanted it to actually take off. I mean, you're seeing similar ideas right now happening even in our own home state of Oklahoma, where there's a builder, but I forget his name, but he wants to create the tallest building in America, right in Oklahoma, and
Scott
it's
Madison. Yeah.
Scott Madison. Tell me a little bit more about it. Do you know like more about his ambitions or?
Not so much. I think a
Okay.
lot of it has been sort of under wraps, but they wanted to build the largest in America, and it was going to be, I think, 200 feet larger than the World Trade Center.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great vision. I wish that was sort of happening. I think it might be on pause, might be happening. There's sort of new news coming out like every month or so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the last I checked on it was that they were going to build the base structure of the building, and then they were going to keep it open to like adding on top, depending on like the demand. So it's like if so, my understanding is I think that the building is going to still happen, but it's just not going to be at the peak height or floor level that they aspire to, but they're going to add on to it if the demand. So it kind of reminded me of the game Tiny Towers, because it's like you just keep adding more as the demand grows. I'm curious to know a little bit more. Are you familiar with the artist who goes by the name the most famous artist, or his name is Matty Mo? He has a project out in New Mexico, which is kind of taking. I think he's kind of almost created his own. I don't know if it fits the definition of an unincorporated town or city, but it seems like that's kind of the goal of his. And it seems to me like it's like he's kind of creating like his own like George R. Martin style like Meow Wolf kind of thing. But there is a lot of sculpture and form type of ideas that are uh, inspiring that project. I haven't checked on that in a few months either, but I just remember the last time I saw it, and I saw like the blueprints for it as well. I mean, he's actually doing it. He's trying to create like a little city that he lives in that's like an art city. I believe that's what it's called. I mean, is that the type of ambition that we need? In theory, from people when it comes to wanting to accomplish these larger scale, eventually making large statues.
Yeah, I mean, I really admire that project. I think they're just outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico. I have to
Mm-hmm.
visit. I haven't visited yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the American Southwest, so I'm going to make my trip out there eventually. I've chatted with him once or twice. Good guy. And
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of fundamental issues you should solve before you go about doing something like that. And I think, for one, it just doesn't seem like artists are capable of working together functionally.
Mm.
There's always too many egos. They really brush up against each other, especially in this age we live in. Everyone has their own ideas of what good art is, and it's like there's a lot of like issues fundamentally with art that haven't been solved yet. And I'm not saying you shouldn't start your own city around art. You could, but you're probably going to see a lot of artists working independently on their own thing as opposed to them collaborating. And even if that happens, you got to vet each and every one of them, because you cannot necessarily trust that someone will do good work. I mean, you can look at their portfolio and you can chat with them for a little bit, but it really has to be monitored. Otherwise, you're going to end up with sort of abstract blobs and random
Mm-hmm.
spires and stuff like this. So I think
Mm.
it's something where the vetting process has to be there. There has to be like a real expectation of what you're going to receive, and some work samples ideally. Like ideally, they make like a really small model, clay model or sketch or something like that of what they want to do, and then and only then I would trust something like that. I think that would be good. Yeah.
So you think basically I mean, in order to create quality structures that have true forms and good, are considered like good works of art that could last, hundreds, if not, 1,000 years. You know, basically there needs to be like an actual economy that might be able to drive the reason behind like we're forming this monument. It's like maybe it's like there's you have to give people a yeah, you have to make the case that this is going to be a town that people are going to visit, that it's going to be a town that people live in, and it's going to be a town where people might admire and appreciate the form that's going to be existing there, right?
Well, that's sort of the classic argument, I think, that you should be asking the people who live in a neighborhood what you're going to build there before you build it. And if you do that, you're going to end up with like Greta Thunberg or something like a Greta Thunberg statue. And I mean, that's
Right.
cool.
No, no, I'm not for that. That'd be terrible.
I mean, that's okay if that's what you want, like, but I cannot say that asking for community feedback is always a wise decision, because that's sort of what it ultimately leads to, is sort of like a consensus of like who's like the least controversial person. And if you
Hmm.
do that, you're just not going to arrive anywhere meaningful or artistically interesting, I think.
No,
Um,
I disagree with that approach too. But I guess the idea is like, how are you gonna, I guess like find the like investment or or I guess theoretically it's like you could create like an unincorporated area where it's like there's not much going on except for like the monument that exists there. I mean, I guess that's like an idea where it's like a destination spot. Like maybe there's like like one there's like a visitor center or something, but it's like the main idea or the main attraction is like the monument that like sits there. Um, I that's like one idea for for I guess like implementing this, but I mean I like the idea of the Alcatraz thing. It's like being able to just take something that's already existing, but make it better, make it less of an eyesore, and yeah, screw the community feedback kind of thing. Because the worst, if you ever go on those like government there's like government like feedback pages where it's like people like submit their own like thoughts and opinions on stuff. I went on one the other day. It was about like it was related to like a Justice Department policy, and it was just pages upon pages of people copying and pasting the same exact template. Like it's like somebody told like a group of people to like go like, hey, take this template and just copy and paste it. So it's like if you give too much room for public comment, people are just going to ruin it by it's like protesters are going to protest and like just use the megaphone just for the sole purpose of blowing people's eardrums out. It's like that's what's called assault. Like that's the kind of like tactics that I think the left like stoops to, where they're just like they just want to you know protest by harassment almost, and like and I don't think that we're gonna ever gonna accomplish good work by listening to people who have concerns or complaints about something all the time.
hmm.
Just I think the philosophy of the approach should just be just do it. Just follow Nike's motto.
Yeah. Well, I think the location thing, I used to not give it any merit, but what I would say is I've sort of come around, and I think there is something there that is valuable, and it's the ability to monetize. For example, like a statue of George Washington in middle of nowhere, Texas, which was sort of the original vision, like massive statue, 500 feet tall, middle of nowhere, Texas. Like that would have been the dream originally. But if you wanted to monetize something like that, it's really difficult in middle of nowhere, Texas. But if you did it somewhere in the Northeast, that's really interesting. Like if you did it in like Morristown, New Jersey, just across from New York City, or something like Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, that's really, really interesting. And that's how you can monetize these things and get like entrance fees, people going to the observation deck, all sorts of things. So I think that's really interesting, and that's sort of how I see these things getting monetized. And you could potentially even make it a real estate investment at that point, when it becomes something in more of a populated area and sort of a prime location, what that lots and lots of people are able to access and visit. That's uh that's how you get a new Statue of Liberty, I think. Yeah.
Do you think have you ever been to the house of George Washington in Virginia?
Mount Vernon. I have not. I need to.
Hmm.
It's on the list. I got to visit. Yeah.
Well, I'd be curious your review of Mount Vernon, just to kind of walk around there and see if you think that even old Washington's own house like is adequate when it comes to his reflecting his form like in that even in that own setting, because if I recall correctly, I think they might have some statues around there. I don't want to get it wrong, but I don't even think that there's like a whole lot of, at least on the outside, there isn't like a good display, or there isn't like a good monument that sort of marks George Washington. It's just more like you drive into this parking lot and it's like, here we are, we're at George Washington's house, and you walk over to it, but there's not like a like that would be cool, to
Yep.
get something like that set up at the guy's own house. It's like why don't we have a large scale monument going on in that place too? So I think it's a lot of uh, missed opportunities that we've had in the last 50 to 100 years in America to think about, like, do you ever think about it from that perspective, that look at like what the Greeks and the Romans were able to accomplish in the forms that they were able to create. Do you think that we're sort of behind on, well, I mean, of course you think that we're behind, but like how far behind do you think we are in terms of like where societies, like we're young in the grand scheme of societies. Do you think that we're but do you think that we're too old to not have the monuments that we should have right now? And why is that a problem?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's ever too late for America. I mean, if
Hmm.
anything's shown us in the past few decades, you never bet against America. It's always going to get back up.
Yeah.
It's going to keep fighting. And I think we have a lot of talent in this country, and we could certainly make a lot more things in this country. We can bring back manufacturing, we can bring back craftsmanship, and we can implement new technology like robots, for example, as I mentioned. And I would not bet against America ever. I think we're 250 almost in terms of age, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, it seems like every great civilization has lasted 1,000 years, 2,000 years, like the Romans, for example. And so we've got a lot of time to get out of the sort of artistic funk we're in right now. And I believe in us fully. I think we're very capable. I just need more people to get involved, and that's what you're seeing as of this year. Like I told you, like I've seen a few sort of large new statue projects come onto the scene, and that's only been in the past few months. It was not like this a few years ago. So I think people really understand this now, especially with AI. Like the only thing that really matters is sort of like this sort of cultural renaissance, sort of optimism and building things with your hands, and sort of beauty, the pursuit of beauty and art.
When you think of robots helping out with these types of projects, like do you envision, because of the scale, like the ambitious scale and the height of some of these things, that they would be able to sort of like use like quadcopter, like like drones to like kind of like lift up some of the parts to help kind of like assemble these things in record pace compared to how they might have to have been done before?
Well, not quite. I would say robotic arms primarily, with the
Hmm.
ability to form metal.
Hmm.
So there's a few ways of fabricating panels for like statues that I've been really into recently. There's a few. So like the first one is like roboforming, where you press on a sheet of metal from both sides, and you
Hmm.
press it, and then it gets pressed into a shape based on a 3D file that you give it. So that's one method. And the other is sort of like hydroforming with like
Hmm.
water jets, like pressing on metal, forcing the metal to one side in a specific way using robots. So that's also interesting.
So like
Alternatively, there's other forms. Yeah.
so like roboforming would be like if you had like a giant like metal set of hands, or like large robot set of hands, like a mech, like we were discussing earlier, and it's like kind of like sculpting like the metal through pressure to kind of, it's almost like like using a giant set of human hands to like kind of mold it together, right? Using a computer image of like what it knows, what the final form is going to look like. That's mind blowing actually, when you put that together.
Yep. And so it has robots on both sides, so it doesn't just like punch through on one side. So
Hmm.
it's a specific amount of pressure so that it doesn't like punch through, but it's enough to just press it inwards. And sometimes you can get a panel that's 5 by 10 or something like this done in like 2 to 3 hours. So that's a really good technology. And then there's also like explosive forming, where you have a bucket of water, you have a mold at the bottom, you have a sheet of metal on top of the mold, and then you drop a stick of dynamite into the water. It blows up, and then the metal gets pressed down onto the mold, and in like the span of a minute you have your piece of metal that will be used for the exterior panel.
Wow. That is really cool.
Yeah.
Were you I mean, you said you're 25. Like, were you ever much of a like a city builder kind of game person, or did you ever did you grow up on Minecraft? Of course, like was there any of that was like an early inspiration?
I was definitely on Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, I was not building like my own structures. I was actually just building into mountains because it was way easier.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's more of like
I'm the same kind of player. I like building into like that's interesting that you mentioned that because I don't know. I think everyone has a different way of playing Minecraft, but I think we're similar in that degree where it's like you like the idea like kind of like the Rushmore style where it's like I'm gonna like mesh into like this already existing mountain or something and kind of create a house that sort of like blends into the scenery, right?
yep. Albeit these days I'm more focused on exteriors and doing things publicly, so
Mm-hmm.
I guess we've changed. But I also played like
You changed engines.
yeah,
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, no, I get a real sense that like a lot of people, a lot of kids that grew up like playing that. Because I mean, I would say Minecraft is still like, there's still like a lot of room for Gen Z, Gen Alpha. They've played a lot of that equally, and they've also probably had like a lot more time on it too. I wonder how that kind of will translate into their type of you know ambitions as well. It's like they might grow up wanting to do the same thing. I think it's a wonderful game. Like I think it's a game that every school should probably have at some point. Um, I I wonder what are countries that are that you think that America might be able to learn from in the ways that they're doing this kind of work right now.
yeah,
Um,
sure. China is probably up there in terms of like panel fabrication, because even the largest statue in the world is in India, and they had to get their panels made in China. Um, so it's about industrial capacity, the ability to cast bronze into molds. Um, we don't really have those kinds of foundries in this country anymore. We used to be able to, but currently we're not there. And so even the country of India that you admire as sort of this industrial power at this point, they had to get their panels made in China. And so this is part of the reason I'm avoiding foundry work. And so there's two methods to make exterior panels. It's like sort of casting by foundries, and that's what the Romans did. That's what sort of the Italians did. That's what sort of the British did. Everyone throughout history has done sort of casting, lost wax casting of statues and panels. And I believe the French, what they did for the Statue of Liberty is they pounded sort of copper into wooden molds by hand. That's called repoussé. And so I don't know if we could really find anyone in America with that sort of skill set, or really it wouldn't be that easy to do. Um, so the sort of forming is sort of the opposite, or rather the other approach instead of casting. And so forming is something the French did to make the Statue of Liberty. But I wonder if there's ways we can do forming way faster and way more effective in America. And so I've been thinking a lot about that. And then there's a bunch of like experimental methods that have been used for statues that are like chemical. There's like electrotyping, where you have sort of a mold and you sort of hook it onto copper anode wires, and then it creates a copy of itself within a vat of water. It's really interesting. I mean, that's something they did in, I think, Germany and the Soviet Union back in like the 1900s. It's been a long time since that's happened, and it's very experimental. But sort of these new methods that haven't been used, it doesn't seem like foundry work is going to be good for America at this point. But you could probably do a lot of really interesting work with like forming. I think forming is probably the way to go. Yeah.
and forming is basically what you just described, kind of like with the automation and like the robots. Yeah.
Any kind of pressing, whether it's like explosive or hydro or robots. Yeah.
Is there a visual example of that what you were just describing with the pressing the metal and stuff like that that I could pull up? Like, is there like a anything I could look up on YouTube right now that might
Yeah, I would look up robot forming. And sometimes it's used for like rockets, automobiles, airplanes. And you could probably find a few videos online. It's a really interesting process.
yeah,
Uh,
I think I found one right now. It's like an orange bot.
yep.
Uh,
And so these are
so
like industrial robots that we have in America already. So
th-
that's really interesting.
this is a good video, you think,
I
or
think
just
so. Yeah, yeah.
okay?
The only thing you need for this is a 3D file,
Wow.
My
and
brain's
everyone
on
has a 3D
fire.
file.
Hey, it's me, Destin, and
Sorry, I'll
welcome back
close
to
that.
Smarter Every.
Well, let's go back to this. Yeah. Oh wow, that's
So that way we can make stuff in America again. You know.
so you have one robot on the other side, and like basically they're mapped together so that whatever this little pin drill kind of thing is like matching with what the other one's doing on the other end. So it's like it's creating. It's like basically like this robot that we're seeing right here is keeping the metal, keeping it from going through the other side, essentially, right?
Pretty much. Yeah, it's applying the same amount of pressure, pressing it inwards ever so slightly, and over the course of a couple hours, it'll finish the panel. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
And then what you do is you just cut off the outline, the skirt of the panel where it's being clamped. Just cut that off. You don't need it anymore. And then what you can do is you can just attach the panels one by one like Legos onto a steel frame. And the inside of the statue is hollow. That's what the Statue of Liberty is. It's also hollow on the inside.
Right. So the idea, because I mean, you can go up the Statue of Liberty. The idea is like create these with ingenuity in mind, and maybe create a way for people to go to the top or something, or create a way for people to sort of interact with whatever the large scale art it is. It's like I don't think I don't think in Brazil, you I don't. Yeah, that'd be weird if you could go to the statue of Jesus Christ, but you can get pretty close to it, and you can admire it from sort of. I think that's the best way. Is like I've never been there before, but there in Rio, but like just being able to kind of like look up would probably just be a tremendous kind of like experience.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I have been inside the Vatican, and that's a different art form altogether, but it still is like the idea, like the effect of like looking up and like or looking at the mirror that like reflects what's up on the top. It's just divine, honestly. It's like you realize that we could still be doing this if we wanted to, but for some reason, um why are we not? I mean, like, why is there any sole reason why we can't bring back sort of like the Michelangelo kind of like ambition?
Um, yeah, I would just say overdetermined probably still, but I mean, financial is probably up there. The cost of labor has increased really quite a lot over the past few decades. It also doesn't help that we sent an entire generation to study computer science in the age of
Hmm.
AI. So I think there's all these people that are kind of disillusioned with software at this point, which might be a good catalyst for the arts. And then it's sort of like artists really hard to work with together in teams. They need good management, and then there's sort of like a lack of good artists. I'd say there's only a few good artists. I could count them on my hand in America that are really artistically interesting in the work they do. And so you would want sort of like an international cooperation of some sorts where you bring a lot of the best European talent to America. I think they want to come to America because Europe is really difficult to live in at this point for various reasons, including cost of living. And I think there's a lot of room for something like this to happen in Texas, for example, where there's so much new space, new cities being developed. There's a lot of room to grow, a lot of room to build, really lax regulations. And that's part of the reason I'm here. It's really easy to build. I was in San Francisco before, and trying to build a large statue there would have been really quite difficult. And so I think there's definitely all these ways in which like you could see like a renaissance of sorts happen in this country, but it's about getting the right people, the right talent, enough funding. I don't think funding's a small part. You definitely need some big backers. You could create sort of either a 501(c)(3) structure like we have already, or you could do like a for-profit entity, and maybe find a way to monetize these statues, whether it's sort of like real estate development or something like this. Alternatively, you could bootstrap and try to pay it off over time. If you do it in a prime location, that's not too difficult. Um, But I think statues are probably the best place to start because, as we mentioned, all you need is the panels, and then the interior is mostly hollow for the most part, and it's a lot easier than buildings. It's more impactful than buildings, in my opinion. And America really doesn't have that many large statues. It's been 140 years, as we mentioned, and I think it's something that Americans really want at this point. I mean, I've seen that over the past few years. The way people have been messaging me, talking to me is like, man, I don't know why I didn't do this. Or, like, I wish we had more of these. You're on to something.
I think your mic got covered up. I'm not sure if you moved a hand over. Try talking again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you better now. Yeah. What kind of do you think that there's a generational shift happening right now that is causing more people to want this type of to desire this type of art form? Do you think that, you know, just based on facts and circumstances surrounding, more people in our age group that are starting to become the future leaders, was there was that a bit of an inhibitor when it came to just kind of waiting for the last generation to sort of like get to where they are now, and finally, we have like the first millennial vice president? I mean, what's going to happen, do you think, once we get more actual people of younger generations to be the ones in charge? Do you think that that's going to be part of the thrust behind this?
Well, I would say part of the driver over the past year, as you can imagine, is Trump. Trump loves statues. He's a
Mm-hmm.
big statue guy, and he's also been talking about the arch for a while. He wants to do the National Garden of Heroes we mentioned. So I think Trump has been a big driver. So you cannot say he didn't play at least a small role. I think he did. Um, but the younger generation, of course, I think even more of my friends, it seems, are now working in sort of the art space, the celebration space. Every year or so, I get messages from people who I know, who I sort of worked with in the tech industry, who are talking to me about these things. Like, Mo, I want to get your take on sort of these different styles of art and architecture. Mo, I want to start building statues of my own. I want to commission a statue. What do you think? Like, we should chat.
Mm. Yeah, no, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And the reason why I tie it back to generational theory is I feel like in some ways that, Jeff and I talk all the time about how it feels like Trump is like a prophet to the younger generation, so to speak. Like, not like an actual, not like a literal prophet, but just like a metaphorical prophet of like, this is, he's laying the cards down, but he's ultimately not going to be the one, obviously, that, will see us through maybe the hardest moments, because he's not going to. I mean, we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll find a way to get him in for a third term. But beyond that, beyond 28, there's going to be, it seems to be at least like a you know younger leadership that's going to be taking up where he left off. So I mean, he's kind of like setting the table for the next generation to sort of pick up from, you know the better place that I think he'll leave us in. And it's ultimately going to be up to us to sort of like make sure it's maintained, uh, that the garden is well maintained, to bring up a metaphor. But I just think that we're entering an interesting period where generations, I think, are starting to matter a lot more to people. And for a generation that reads about the way the old societies were managed and the way that they were conducted, the way they conducted themselves in textbooks, I get the sense that there will either be some kind of longing to go back to that, to those old ways. And I'm curious what your thoughts were when you were younger. Like, what did you aspire to do, before you turned 18? Like, what was kind of the what was kind of driving you from an early age?
Well, I mean, I think, I mean, like every 18-year-old really just doesn't have the right idea. You get told
Hmm.
all these things by your parents and your sisters and brothers and stuff like this. I remember wanting to go into finance because my sister said if you go into finance, you make a lot of money. I mean, so you weren't really motivated by the right things, but I think in college I discovered startups and tech, and I think that's really interesting. And I was like the early employee at a few different startups, including like Extropic, for example, which is kind of a big one now. Those guys are pretty good. And so it seems like sort of the tech industry is sort of a bridge to building bigger, larger, more ambitious things. And that's why people really love it. And it seems like Twitter is like probably the best platform for this sort of stuff. And I'm really lucky to have met a lot of the people I've met and to have sort of a following of people who are really supportive of me because not everyone has this. I mean, I grew up in Delaware, for example, so just a kid from Delaware. Yeah, we don't even have an airport. It's really hard to stay connected to the world.
You
Um,
have a lot of LLCs, but that's about it.
yeah, yeah. I saw the file cabinet the other day. Um, but it's really quite interesting the community that's formed on like Twitter. I'm pretty lucky in that sense. I've made a lot of good friends through that, and over time you sort of find people who teach you things, and your concept develops further. I think I started this company with sort of the goal of at least thinking through why the world wonders of the ancient world and modern world. Why don't we have any world wonders in America? And so that's like really interesting to me is like sort of the world wonders, sort of these sort of historical monuments that were really inspiring, like awe inspiring, quite large, like mega structures, if you will. And it seems like a lot of the ancient ones have been destroyed except for the pyramids. But also the modern ones are, they're all right, but compared to the ancient ones, they were, yeah, I mean, the ancient ones were really inspiring. So it's like, wh- why can't we build world wonders in America? Because we are, a really beautiful civilization that is a force for good. And I think our public spaces sort of reflect that, and we should be reflecting that more often in public spaces. And I wish I saw more of a focus on sort of these large scale physical artistic things as opposed to large scale functional things like buildings or rockets or computers and stuff like this. Yeah.
What's the most grating thing to you about the current art scene in America that maybe is just kind of frustrating to witness?
Well, there's a movement, and you know, you could argue that it's not a bad thing. It's called classical realism, and the idea of classical realism is I should take a photo of you, take a photo of Kaelan, and then I should copy every single detail of you onto a sculpture, and if that was what I was supposed to do, why would I convert you to a sculpture in the first place? Why do I
Mm,
need to do that? I have a photo of you. And so what the old masters used to do is they used to sort of capture the essence of Kalen,
mm,
and they would use their sort of mind's eye and sort of sculpt from memory and sort of what they imagine about you and what they know about you and sort of your essence, if you will.
mm,
Try to capture the spirit of Kalen as opposed to sort of copy pasting Kalen into clay or
mm-hmm,
marble or whatever. And so classical realism, it's brought on by technology. So there's this way that technology has sort of impacted art in a negative way. And we talked about the positive ways already, but the sort of negative way is when I don't have to use my mind anymore. I don't have to think. I can just copy every single detail from your face onto the sculpture. And that's classical realism. And you could argue there are some really interesting things about it, like it takes a great deal of effort and time to copy something, but you have to ask yourself, is it worth copying, or shouldn't I have been able to try and do this myself? I don't know.
mm. Is that why we often, when we see old presidents like Abraham Lincoln and some of the pronounced features and paintings and things like that, that it's like, some people like argue like, oh, he looked a little different in real life, and same with you know, other types. I mean, I think Abraham Lincoln's a good example because I think that we have like a caricature view of him, and that's maybe informed by the idea of like not taking the classical realism approach, but the alternative would be, what's the technical term, like if like inverse, what's if something's classical realism and you take like the alternative approach or the inverse of that, what would the
A
term be?
traditional sculpture is what
Traditional
we call
sculpt,
it.
yeah. So like maybe it's like the essence of Abraham Lincoln, like somebody like, and in one angle or the way that like his like side profile like maybe was like analyzed by the person. It was like, oh, I like the way his side profile looks, so we're gonna make that incorporate that into his frontal image. Is that kind of like the idea is like not really following the person's true form to a T, but taking an idea that was prominent in the master's memory and being able to sort of you know interpolate and it's like interpolation versus like an exact replica of like what that person looked like, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. Sorry.
It's okay.
Yep. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. hmm I know that problem though, because it's like sometimes when the
Sorry.
phone rings it takes over the whole
Yeah,
yeah.
sorry about that. Yeah. So I think that's a really good way to put it, the way you've put it. I would say, like, of
So
course, there's sort of like the characteristics of the person that really matter, and that should be shown in the face and in the sculpture, like sort of the traits and qualities they had as well. Yeah.
and that would obviously I think imply that like an over reliance on AI to create things like art would probably be uh, bending a little bit to the classical realism framework because AI tries its best to take a look at a reference point and match it identically or almost too perfectly to the point where it's just like, well, we already have a photo, like why would we have needed, it's like people who just oversaturate with AI whenever it's like there's not even like a real need to do that. Is that also like a bad use case or concern?
I think AI is a big part of this, and you see a lot of these AI tools are, you sort of enter a name of a person and some pictures, and it creates a 3D model, and you could use that 3D model on something like these robots, the robo-forming method. But AI doesn't know how to draw. AI, I mean, it does. I mean, it knows sort of the classical realism approach of sort of copy pasting the person, and you just copy paste the person, paint them bronze, and call it a sculpture. But it's not a creative expression of the person themselves, and so that's something that men and humans are still capable of doing, and that's really important. And some people I know have taken a hybrid approach, sort of using AI to create the 3D model, and then they sort of edit by themselves alongside an artist. So that's interesting. But I think there is value in sort of creating these things from scratch still, and trying to imagine what the person was like, look at pictures online, sort of reference images, and then use your mind's eye to sort of imagine what their face would look like in this position versus that position, and what they would have been doing with their hands and different poses, different sculptural elements. And that's still something where, I mean, AI could assist with ideas, but I cannot say for certain that AI will ever know how to draw the way like a master artist would. Yeah.
Hmm. I wonder what was we talked a little bit at the beginning about CPAC, but what did you get out of your CPAC experience this year? What did you find to be the most interesting parts of it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I walked around with a statue of George Washington, and it was really, really fun. I met Jeff on your team. And I also talked to lots and lots of people about the mission, because the goal is to take this 10-footer we've made in France and scale it up even bigger. So we can make a 20-footer with robotic forming in about 2 weeks. We can make a 50-footer in 1 month. And so that's really interesting to me. How can we get that done as soon as possible? And so the goal now is to take this 10-footer from France, bring it to Port of Houston, pick it up, drive to Austin and install it. And so we've got somebody, Prototown actually, has offered to pay for it, and we're going to be installing it there, and so that'll be really fun. I'll be back, and I'll be installing it there, and so I think CPAC in general was a really interesting experience. First conference I've been to in a while. I'm usually more of an online kind of guy, so I got to wear my suit and look sharp. Good experience overall, networking, and I think going forward, I'll be in DC next month, and probably at SF after that, to talk to patrons. That's the main thing, talking to patrons always, trying to get the word out there about the work we're doing, and meet people who want to sort of back the mission. Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll get a chance to meet up if you're gonna be in DC. I'd love to, go to wherever you're gonna be at and get to shake hands in person. So hopefully, yeah, just keep me up to date and also keep me up to date with the installation there in Austin with George Washington because we'd love to see that and maybe talk again about how that showcase is going whenever it's fully set up. But I wanted to thank you and also give you a little bit of a plug with your X right here if anyone wants to follow. It is Mo Monuments, everyone. So check out his X. We know you're keeping it regularly up to date, and yeah, just thank you so much for joining and coming on. And um, any more ideas about how people can get involved through the website? Anything you want to say? Last words?
Yeah, I'm really grateful for you hosting me, man.
Mm.
Really appreciate it, and thanks for chatting with me. I would say the main thing is you can go to our website, moremonuments.org. You can enter your email, and that'd be a good way to contribute. Otherwise, we'll keep you updated on that list, and you could maybe purchase a statue. These are $250. We make them in America in Las Vegas. This is inside the White House, by the way. I don't know if you can really see that, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's in the White House. We placed it in the White House. That was kind of fun. It's 12 inches tall on a 4-inch pedestal, made in America in Las Vegas. We make them by hand and paint them by hand. It's really quite fun. And if you wanted to, you could donate to our projects on the projects page. Specifically for George Washington, we want to take this 10-footer and scale it up even bigger. So we'd be really grateful for your support. Yeah,
We look forward to seeing more of your work in the future. And again, yeah, hit me up when you're here next month. All right.
I will. Thank you so much, Kaelan.
All right. See you, Mo.
Take
See you
care.
next time.